What is up, MMA fans? This is Tudor Leonte for Sherdog here, and today join me in welcoming the UFC lightweight contender, Mr. Natan Levy. Hello, Natan. Shalom. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Where are you right now? Because I'm noticing that you have such a beautiful venue behind of you.
Oh, I'm at the pool by my house in the apartment complex. I just got done training and it's such a beautiful day that I thought it's better to do the interview here than inside.
That's very, very nice. Thank you. And I hope fans will enjoy the view as well. So listen, let's talk a little bit about your MMA career, about the beginnings of your MMA career. Actually, let's talk a little bit about you in general. I read that you were born in Paris, France. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
But I'm a bit confused. You were born in France, but then you moved to Israel. How was the story going on?
So I moved to Israel when I was 2 months old, which is very young. And we always spoke French at home and Hebrew outside of home. That's why I speak fluent French. And we visited France many times, and I even lived there for a year when I was like 4 to 5. But mainly my life has been in Israel. I consider myself more Israeli than French.
Did you like it here in Paris when you visited? You know, even though you were a child, obviously.
Yeah, I love Paris. I think it's the most beautiful city in the world.
Thank you very much. I believe the Parisian will appreciate that comment. I also read that as a teenager you trained karate and kung fu. When did you think, to mix them up for the first time?
So I always loved martial arts and wanted to learn, a lot of things. But back when I was a kid, the internet wasn't what it is today. It only got started and you couldn't just find gyms anywhere. So at first I really wanted to be like a boxer or a kickboxer, even an MMA fighter from a young age. But then, the only thing I had by my house was a Kung Fu school. And I did like Bruce Lee and the movies and everything. So it was very cool to learn it. And when I was 16, my Sifu, my Kung Fu teacher, wanted to fly to Japan to become like, to kind of do a transfer to karate.
Okay.
And I was 16 years old and I flew with him. And that's how I really got started in karate. So I always say, I got started in karate because what we did was kind of a hybrid style. But at some point, we really shifted the focus from mostly Kung Fu to completely Okinawan style karate.
So you told me that you started the nearest gym, it was a kung fu school, but I don't know, perhaps there are a bit of a stereotype, so please don't take it this wrongly. I thought that Krav Maga was like had a huge influence in Israel, that it was thought as a sort of self-defense. Can you please explain me, perhaps your relationship with that discipline and in general Krav Maga in Israel?
So Krav Maga, yeah, of course, it's very famous in Israel. But like, sometimes you see a Brazilian guy and he's more like Muay Thai background than Jiu-Jitsu, really.
Yeah.
Same, all martial arts. Obviously, it's always cool to do something that was developed in Israel, but it's also very cool to do something from the East, something from America, right? It's also very like attractive. So for me, it's always been MMA and martial arts like Kung Fu, karate. It's pretty much it. Krav Maga, I think a lot of it is that even before I knew really what it was, I think a big part of it is that it's made for self-defense. And my goal wasn't really to have self-defense. Like, of course, it's good, to be able to defend yourself. But for me, it was always about like getting a black belt, becoming a black belt one day, being like a martial artist, fighting like in the movies. And what I saw in Krav Maga is more something very simple yet effective, but it wasn't what I was looking for really.
And when did you transition to MMA?
So I transitioned to MMA at age 22. I flew to Vegas with, just this crazy dream of being a UFC fighter and fighting MMA. I had never competed in any martial art in my life. And just, showed up. Hey, my name is Natan and I want to be a UFC fighter. Obviously, some of the karate moves I knew and used were pretty good, and a lot of them were pretty useless for the goal of fighting, right?
Yeah.
So I had to make a big transition, and I was really lucky enough to have like the right coaches. First of all, to believe in me, because I gotta say, today, when I see some guy show up at the gym and he starts karate chopping the heavy bag, and I'm like, I don't really feel like this guy's a weirdo, So I was the weirdo coming in, and they still took me in and taught me, the right way. Let me keep the things that worked for me with adding the different elements of the MMA game. So I really feel like from one part, I had to like forget a lot of the karate and not use it. But on the other hand, what I did keep is priceless. It's techniques that I do, my moves. I'm going to fight this guy. He can't do it. I'm going to fight that guy. He never fought anybody who can do those things. I can do those things.
You said that you flew to Vegas, which is understandable, obviously. But how was the MMA situation as far as training goes in Israel?
In Israel, MMA was very underdeveloped. It was pretty much people doing jiu-jitsu plus Thai boxing.
Okay.
And like for me, it was a lot of people told me, hey, listen, before you fly out over there, you should first become an Israel champion in MMA. Or before you fly to Vegas, you should get a brown belt in jiu-jitsu before you even think of doing MMA, right? Of course, it's a lot of like naysayers who have never done it themselves, but they're going to tell you how to do it. And thank God I didn't listen, because I would still be in Israel training, waiting for that brown belt, or I would still try to be Israel's MMA champion, which there's no such thing. And I would still be home. But no, I left without knowing anything. And I knew, like, when I wanted to be the best in karate, I flew to Japan for months, trained there very hard, and go through many hardships, because I knew that's the price to learn at the source. And the moment I took the decision that I want to do MMA, I wanted to learn everything at the source. So I knew, I could learn jiu-jitsu. Of course, I got something to learn from the Israeli coaches. But if I go to Vegas and learn from a Brazilian coach, that would be even better, to learn even from the basics, everything from the master. Same thing with boxing, kickboxing, everything. So that's what I did.
What did your family tell you when you said that you're moving to the United States?
My family knows I'm crazy. I told my mom when I was 16 that I'm flying with my teacher to Japan to train. And I asked her for permission, and she was like, yeah, sure. She didn't really believe I'm going to do it. And next thing she knows, I show up home with a plane ticket. I'm like, that's it, Mom. I got my plane ticket. I'm leaving on that date. She's like, whoa, who, wait, when, how? And I explained her everything, and just flew. You know, she couldn't say no anymore. She had already said yes.
Your journey as a professional started in the Legacy Fighting Alliance. How did you get in touch with this promotion?
LFA, my coach got in touch with them. And, you know, I think I'm really lucky to have fought there. Like all my pro fights outside the UFC have been there. And I think it's like a different level than many regional shows. I think when you fight there, it's not about like building your record. You know, some people go on a path of like getting as much wins as possible until you get noticed. And LFA is like every win is a big deal. And you don't need to get 10, 12, 15 wins. You got to get a few good ones, quality wins. And that's how it goes in LFA. And of course, me started late with karate when I was 15. I started late learning MMA when I was 22, competing amateur at 24, competing pro at 26. That's what you would consider late, you know? So it wasn't about getting a shortcut, but it was about using the time right. And if I need to get 15 fights in all kinds of crazy promotions, it's going to take 5-6 years. If I can get a few good fights, it's going to take 2-3 years. And that's what we did, and it worked.
The evidence that you are quite a quick learner is in the fact that you know, your first couple of professional fights ended by submission. So you told me that you are coming from a striking background, you know, Kung Fu, karate. How was, you know, your first experience on the mat, on grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
At first, it was very confusing and really not what I'm used to doing. You know, even I'll give you an example, like stance-wise in karate, we would always stand horse stance. So you're using your muscles to spread your legs, you know, as far away from each other as possible. And then you tell me that I need to glue my knees together to do an armbar or something. My body just doesn't want to do it. It was always like too loose. No matter what I did, it was too loose. But my striking coach told me to do jiu-jitsu as much as possible. Like he made it clear that even though he's going to help me with my striking, no matter how much he helps with my striking, it's not going to be enough if I don't really devote myself to grappling. And that's what I did. I started showing up at Syndicate once a day, of course, for MMA training, which includes a lot of grappling. But on top of that, 2 more sessions of jiu-jitsu every day, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And on top of that, my other striking with Coach Giff, with Coach Wood, you know, running, strength conditioning, all that stuff. But no matter what I did, I was adding 2 sessions of jiu-jitsu every day. And after the first 3 months here, started to tap some people, you know, some maybe white belts, blue belts. Went back home for a few months for my visa to save some money. Came back, started training jiu-jitsu again. And next thing you know, I was starting to win like some tournaments as a white belt, then as a blue belt. Now recently I've received my purple belt. And yeah, and of course, when I had my first MMA fight, all of a sudden I got somebody in a guillotine in my first amateur fight, then a rear naked choke, another guillotine. And then it just, you know, I found out, first of all, that I didn't learn jiu-jitsu just to like, oh, this is a hold that I need to cover. I fell in love with it. I love doing jiu-jitsu to this day. I love grappling. I love wrestling, even though it's hard. I love, submissions. So it was natural to me to keep learning and not just do enough so I can say like, oh, I'm good to defend takedowns. No, I want to take people down and I want to choke them. So it makes you engage in it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and you turn out to be quite successful at grappling and at submitting people. Consider that you also earn your UFC contract, after submitting your opponent. Before we talk about that, what was, in your opinion, what was the toughest fight you had in LFA?
The toughest fight, there's two of them. One is against Henry Barahona. It was my third pro fight in Albuquerque. And the opponent was very tough, and fighting in the elevation was very hard. And it was my first pro decision, so it was the first time going 15 minutes. I lost the first round, and then I had to come back and win two, which I did. And the other one was my last LFA fights when in the beginning of the second round, I almost got knocked out. I got dropped a few times and I had to survive, fight back until I could get a good takedown, recover a little bit, and then get to work. I ended up winning 2 rounds out of the 3.
You earned your UFC contract after submitting Shaheen Santana on Dana White's Contender series last year. What do you remember from that night?
I remember, of course, a lot of pressure. The big opportunity that I got on 2 days' notice. I believed in myself, but the fact that I didn't have a camp for it and everything, it added pressure. But, I thrive under pressure, and I took that pressure and used it against him. And it was a great night. The fight wasn't yet some dangerous tools, but overall I felt like I dominated. Almost a perfect fight on my part. And then getting the finish was priceless. I knew I had the contract in the bag.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the third Israeli fighter to compete in the Octagon, after Moti Horenstein and Noad Lahat. How does it make you feel?
Very proud. And, for me, it's a great honor to be the third Israeli. But also for me, the goal was always, when you come from a small country and you're a big underdog and there is no, our country is so small, you don't have a big pool of athletes. You don't have a big pool of MMA fighters, that's for sure. And the ones who do, when you got MMA fighters, they don't have who to train with, like high-level sparring partners, high-level competition that's gonna sharpen them. Coaching, also is hard to come by. So you're really an underdog. But for me, I never wanted to be a good fighter for an Israeli guy, right? I don't want to be known as, oh, this guy is one of the best Israeli fighters ever. And, there's only a few of them. And no, for me, I want to be a top fighter, regardless of where I'm from, without needing to compare where I'm from. No matter where I'm from, I'm a great fighter,
Yeah, that's of course it. I was just focusing on Israel, considering that, as you said, there are a few amount of fighters who came from there, and I'm actually quite interested in general in the regional fighting scene. But I have some other question before I move to that. I know that, or at least I saw some of your stories on Instagram that you are at least in touch with Noad Lahat. What was his advice for your UFC debut, if he had any for you?
Yeah, Noad is a good friend of mine, a little bit of a mentor. And, his advice, he really believes in me. So it just, he thinks I'm going to have a great fight and I'm going to win. I told him it's been a year and I'm hungry since my last fight. And he told me, that's good, because until now, you only ate at McDonald's. This time you're really going to eat. You're going to know it's going to be a feast, if you understand the comparison.
Yeah.
I'm ready to really enjoy that win.
I believe it will be quite a feast, moving from McDonald's to sort of banquet. Did you also perhaps get in touch with Moti Horenstein?
No, we're Facebook friends, I think. Other than that, no, I never met him or talked to him. I think he's a good, Israeli pioneer of martial arts. He competed in karate, kickboxing, some grappling stuff, some crazy, fights where the first 2 rounds are karate, then you're allowed to take it to the ground, crazy stuff like that. But I don't think when he competed, it was really MMA. I think it was a different thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, before they introduced the unified rules and before, the UFC came to popularity, it was, let's put it like this, a different kind of sport, but still it was interesting, to see different
Absolutely.
fighting styles clashing one to another.
Definitely. And he didn't get no easy matchups. Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr, I think, was his opponents.
Yeah, not easy at all. You told me, the Israeli situation 8 years ago. How is it right now? I mean, are MMA currently developing in Israel?
Yeah, it is. I think it's made huge strides. First of all, there's more pro fights. Different shows popping up. None of them, I think, can be profitable at the moment. I don't know. I don't run the shows. But the fact that it's very, one promotion would do 1 show a year, a different promotion maybe 2 shows a year. So it's better than it used to be, but there's still room to grow. And what's great is they started the, IMMAF. They started an Israeli federation. So they're starting to have some amateur fights in Israel, which I think is really what the country needs. Instead of getting sharp on their pro record, people can now really test themselves and sharpen up on their amateur record. Everybody can fight everybody. And then the best ones who have real fighting experience or can really be considered pro, be sent out to fight pro, maybe start at the regional scene, but then get to an international scene. So I think that's their way to do it. I was always very convinced that that's the way that Israeli can go forward, is if there's amateur fights in Israel, or of course leave the country and move to the US. There's a few fighters who've joined me here. One of them is Eli Barzilai. It's my little brother. He's just about to turn pro. He did all his amateur fights in the US, and you can see it's a different level of athletes. Shimon Smotritsky, another Israeli who just fought on the Contenders. It didn't go his way, but at age 21, the whole future is in front of him. We got some more talent, guys training in Russia, guys training here in the US. But right now, 2 options, in my opinion: either go through the amateur scene in Israel or go train outside of Israel.
How was the news of your signing with the UFC received in Israel? I mean, did television or newspaper cover the news? How big was it?
It was pretty big. The moment I signed, usually I don't go to bed after fights because I'm just, my heart is pumping and answering messages and, family. We're opposite hours, so I call my family. So usually I spend the whole night awake. This time, I spent the whole night awake doing interviews in Hebrew because, again, the hours are opposite. Then stayed up, did interviews in English all day, got a couple of hours of sleep. Again, interviews all night. So it was pretty crazy, but you got to strike the metal when it's hot, and it was a big news. So I had to do all those interviews, even though I just wanted to go to bed and rest. It was pretty big.
You are now scheduled to face Rafa Garcia on November the 20th. What do you expect from your next opponent?
I expect nothing but the best, right? I'm in the UFC. I'm fighting the top of the heap. And he's an elite fighter. I'm an elite fighter. I think I'm more skilled. I think I'm going to be more hungry, more ready. And I think it's going to be a great fight. I see myself coming out on top.
How do you think that is going to end? How do you imagine this fight will go?
I think I'm going to finish him in the second or third round. Maybe a submission, maybe a knockout. I see openings for both, but he's a tough guy, so it's not going to be easy. But I think after some time, when he gets tired, I can get a finish.
Okay, so before I let you go, I have one last curiosity, but tell me if it's too personal to disclose. Are you a believer, or are you a practitioner
of religion? No.
No. Okay, I was just curious, how MMA fighters or Jew MMA fighters can combine or can agree, not agree, but can mix up the Shabbat with fighting on Saturdays.
Yes, it's a problem for many athletes because most of the competition, soccer, MMA, a lot of it is Friday night, Saturday. But me, I don't really do the Shabbat, so it's okay, and also the sport is very important to me. So I think it's a higher priority for me.
Yeah, sorry, it was just a bit
No
of
problem.
It doesn't happen often for me to talk with someone having a background in different religion. I spoke with Catholics. I hope to speak also with Muslims one day. So I was just curious, since religion sometimes seems to be an important part of this sport in general.
No problem.
That said, Toda Rava, it was such a pleasure to talk with you. Do you have any last message?
First of all, thank you for having me. And thank you to everybody that's going to follow the article. Thank you to everyone who supports me. And I can't wait to put on a show on Saturday.
Javeri, thank you very much once again. And
Thank you. Grazie.
have a nice day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.